Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple Americans. This week featured Arsenal's fourth Premier League match of a season, a North London derby against Spurs. Keith, do you have trouble typing Derby with an E? That was difficulty I found this week.
I have to say, after Sunday, I have no troubles with anything. It's a great day. It's a great day.
I wish I'd seen the match live. I watched it time shifted, and I got such a boost from it. I think I may have felt better about this victory than any previous Arsenal victory because I was going into it so trepidatious, wondering what the lineup was going to be and just fearing the worst and not coming away disappointed.
You're becoming a real fan. That feeling of anxiety, that's normal, by the way. Yeah, it was such a weird one, and it kicks off, and we'll talk about this, kicks off a really interesting, really potentially very tricky stretch for us. But yeah, that started about as well as it could. We were clearly hobbled, but I thought we played very well overall. I have some nitpicks, but we'll get into those. But overall, I think one of the underlying messages here is that even in a weakened state, we're still better than that lot. Yeah.
So more to come on that. With last week's episode, I wanted to send a shout out to viewer Islam Nahid, who made a very nice comment about the show. So thank you for watching, and we appreciate it always. Anybody else who'd like to comment, it's something we always appreciate. So, some follow-up from an episode, probably a year ago, maybe even more. So, if you remember, the 23-24 kit had the lightning bolt socks, right? And when they wore that kit in the last match of the previous season, some of the players, because the lightning bolts were only on the outsides of the socks, not on the inside sides of the socks, right? And we had noticed some of the players had the lightning bolts on the insides instead of the outsides, and we were just kind of laughing about it. And then they got their acts together, and we didn't see that during the regular season, the coming fall. One thing that I noticed, so my son now has a full Arsenal 24-25 kit, shirt, shorts, socks, everything, Saka jersey. Saka's his favorite player on Arsenal. But he has this season's socks. And you know what I noticed? The feet actually do have an L and an R on them. And this season, there's almost no difference. I mean, there's very little difference on either side. But there definitely was last year, so I imagine they probably had the same thing. I mean, Adidas is still their provider, their supplier. They probably did. So that was interesting. I guess they just weren't paying attention.
I mean, they are also socks for children, so I don't know. My impression had always been, and I could be entirely wrong about this, but my impression had always been that athletic socks were more. They're not. I'm going to say tube socks. That's not right, but they weren't necessarily designed for one foot or the other. They were just supposed to be a little more generic, as opposed to socks designed for necessarily one foot or the other. That was kind of always my impression.
Could be. I mean, the socks that I wear on a daily basis actually are asymmetric. The design is the same, but the big toe sticks out further. Stuff like that. So mine actually have L and R as grown man socks.
I mean, I have a couple of dress socks that do that, but most of my plain white ones, I wash them. I don't know which one's which. It doesn't matter. They're,
right. All right. Well, moving away from footwear into soccer news, what's going on with the U.S. men's national team?
Well, there's some good news and bad news. The bad news first is that they look terrible in a 1-1 draw with New Zealand. That is both the good and ugly news, because I watched the game and that is 2 hours of my life I am never getting back. Wow. We talked about this a little bit last week. The U.S. is missing some key players with the interim manager. They looked pretty dire in some cases. New Zealand's not good. And the U.S. and then even the goal, I was going to try and find a clip of the video, but I don't want to watch any more of that game if I don't have to. It was kind of a weird fluky goal, knocked off of one of our players. It was kind of a mess. That's how they got their goal late in the game to tie it. Um, it
Okay.
is definitely a game that happened. It is.
So that's the bad and the ugly. What's the good?
The good news is that also that day, and officially announced during the game, Mauricio Pochettino, the former Chelsea manager and former manager at several other stops, but you may remember him from last season with Chelsea, is now officially the manager of the U.S. men's national team. Officially given signed the contracts, now can actually talk about it. As opposed to had been kind of a thing that was kind of generally rumored to be true, but for various reasons had not been made official. Actually, I forgot to find it. I'll try and get it for the Athletic. Had a really fascinating sort of a trail of the whole story of how the two sides basically courted each other. There was suggestions of interest. The U.S. team might be interested in talking to Pochettino. We thought, I might be interested in talking to them. And they had a couple meetings, and some of the conversations back and forth. Particularly mentioned one of the key go-betweens was the women's coach, Emma Hayes, who prior to coaching the U.S. women had been the women's coach at Chelsea. And apparently she and Pochettino had, been friendly with each other. And so they had a pretty good relationship. Apparently, she during the Olympics when the women had an off day, would actually met up with Pochettino somewhere else in France. So intrigue if you're into that sort of thing. But it's nice and exciting. He's saying all the right things that you would want to hear from the manager at this point. And he will officially manage for the first time in the October window, when the U.S. will play Panama in Austin, Texas, and then we'll play Mexico in Mexico, not in the Azteca, not in Mexico City, but I forget where it was going. I think it's in Guadalajara is where they're going to be, but not in the Azteca. But still, they'll play Mexico. That'll be interesting to see as he gets to the U.S. for the first time, and hopefully with a slightly fuller strength lineup than we had this past window.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Our long national nightmare is over. Now, whether that means not having a manager or having Greg Berhalter as a manager, your mileage may vary. Although I don't think Berhalter's that bad. But anyway.
All right. So shifting gears to World Cup qualification, do you want to start with AFC?
Yeah. So just quickly update on the teams we are following. Japan played their second game in Group C in the third round, where they were in Bahrain, a game they beat the hosts 5-0. Combined with their 7-0 win over China, they finished the window with 2 wins from 2 games, a 12-0 goals for, goals against. They are very comfortably in first place, as you might imagine.
That's good. Good for them.
Off to a good start for officially qualifying, which we pretty much expect, but
right.
Off to a good start in that regard.
So, meanwhile, in CONMEBOL, the two teams that you and I are each tracking played each other. For reasons that will become clear, I'll let you share the result.
Right. So, yeah, big one here. Colombia at home, 2-1 over Argentina. The winning goal, a penalty converted by James Rodriguez, who, yes, is still playing. Good for you, James. Actually, he's always played very well for Colombia. He's had some difficulty, it seems, translating that into his club performances. Really excellent in the 2014 World Cup. Got some big contracts that he never really quite seemed to live up to. But continues to knock about, and now has the winning goal at a home game against Argentina, and so these two are top of the table in CONMEBOL. Argentina on 18 points, Colombia on 16 points. Again, the top 6 in South America qualified, both of them well on their way, I think, to qualification for the World Cup.
Yeah, those top 3, Uruguay is in third. I mean, they're all, within striking distance. I mean, Uruguay wins, Argentina draws, and, they're all of a sudden level. It's pretty tight at the top.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about that, though, is, there is no prize for finishing on top of the table in qualifying. The goal is to qualify. You do that,
right.
Everything's great.
Right, that's true.
But they will pick up again in the October window. Will be the next phase of South American qualification as the marathon continues. I'm trying to look up the return match. The Colombia Argentina. There it is. It'll be June 2025.
Yeah.
So we'll see if both teams are continuing their strong play.
Right. All right. I'm hearing from you that we have some more injuries beyond those sustained during the international break to contend with as the season moves on.
Right. So you may have noticed, and we'll talk a little bit about the lineup in a moment. You may have noticed that Zinchenko was not only not starting, he wasn't even on the bench on Sunday. That is because he apparently has an injured calf from some point this week. It wasn't really clear. The impression, the sound of it was it happened, I guess, when he was with Arsenal as opposed to when he was playing with Ukraine. I don't know. All I know is he was not there and was, the official announcement was a calf injury. We don't know anything more. Or at least I didn't see anything more about that. That was pre-game. Now, post-game, we may mention this. You may have seen Bukayo Saka came off somewhat later in the match. I want to say around the 80th minute or so, into the 80s. He left, came off. Now, given the state of the game, that wasn't in and of itself something crazy. We've seen him come off already a couple times, a few minutes, before the end of the game. So it's not entirely crazy that he would leave early. He did look to be a bit hurt. And, which, again, we've seen that before, and he's generally fine the next game. But apparently for Arteta's line was that Saka, quote, could not continue, which is a little stronger than you'd usually get in a post-game setting. At that point, now this is all post-game from yesterday being Sunday after the game. They said the extent of the potential injury was still unclear, so we don't know anything. Hopefully we hear more soon, because that would not be good in so many ways. But, he, and especially coming off what was another strong performance from him and from the team at large, I will say, but we'll talk about that more in just a bit. But that's what I saw as far as injuries go.
Okay.
And otherwise, we should add no real updates on Odegaard, Marino, any of the players we talked about last week. No real updates other than it sounds like it'll be weeks, plural, for any of them. Well, hopefully. Arteta's going to be very tight-lipped on injuries. So.
Yeah. Ooh, not good. Hopefully they recover quickly. At least that's not the reason Rice wasn't playing. We know we'll have him back.
He'll be back, yes.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yep. All right, well, let's talk Tottenham. Yeah. So to begin with, the jerseys they were wearing, right? So typically for one of our North London derbies, we expect both teams in their home colors in both matches. They don't clash, right? They wear white, we wear red, everything's good, right? But it sounds like your earliest complaint about this season's jerseys actually led to them requiring a clash kit. Your complaint is too much white on the sides, right? And that's basically what it was. They said there was too much white. I guess I don't know how they measure it. I don't know if they look at a percentage of like the area occupied by red and white. I don't know how they determine that, but too much white.
Yeah, that I did see there was a bit there too, is because it's a lot of the white, but also you notice the highlight, the accent color is also blue. And if you look at Spurs, it is white with blue accents.
Oh, true.
One area that I thought was fascinating is that typically one of the areas they look to see contrast is not so much in the shirts, although it's important, but also the shorts as well. Partly because the referees, as they watch, think about how much time they spend watching, the ball and sort of things happening on the ground. And you want the contrasting shorts colors to make sure that you can sort of track. If you're looking at everything from the waist down, obviously that's where you're going to see.
Right.
Of course, we say that Arsenal's kits, of course, the way kits have black shorts. Spurs home kits are a nice dark blue.
Right.
So you actually have the shorts level, don't get any difference there. Obviously, this was the shirts that drove that. It's apparently, they call it, at least in the Premier League era, so we're talking since 91, 92, and that range is the first time that they haven't worn Arsenal red and Spurs in white. So theoretically, the first time in modern history here, I don't know. I'm sure somebody knows, right? I'm sure somebody is able to find the last time one of them actually wore a change kit during the game. But I don't know. That's kind of interesting. It has been the first time, at least, obviously, in now 30 plus years that's happened, which is kind of weird when you think about it.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, typically there wouldn't be a clash. I mean, it is, and who knows if this is factoring in. They don't usually have blue sleeves like they do this season, right? It's usually like an all white shirt, right?
Spurs, yeah, they've always had. It's always been white, and there's generally been some amount of blue. Usually, some amount of blue is an accent color.
Right.
Sometimes,
like the crest is blue and the sponsor is blue and stuff.
And sometimes just like, thin along like the collar or along the sleeve stripe. And sometimes you'll see them with a little bit heavier, sometimes on the shoulders or a side panel, sometimes a little bit heavier, sort of depending on the look they're going for.
Yeah.
Like we've seen with Arsenal's kits. On some level, it's red with white sleeves. How complicated could that be? And yet, think about how many different designs you've seen. And just now, what was it? Now in our third season, and we can add in the previous year in the documentary, you get your 4. I mean, already that's, Liverpool wears red, and yet a bunch of, United all in red, Chelsea in blue. Like, what seems like pretty straightforward designs can actually get fairly complex. And so, the designers are always trying to do something a little bit different to keep things interesting. But in this case, apparently it was too white. And so they wore black, like the villains we are.
I'm sure from the majority of the crowd's perspective, we were that day.
Good.
That's the way we like it.
We should also add that this was pointed out, of course, because of this. When we play the home leg in January, Spurs will be wearing their away kit, which is apparently a light blue with some interesting graphic designs on it. Well, we'll of course be wearing red and white.
Right. Yeah. So, meanwhile, as far as the lineup and potential rotations we theorized about last week, Timber ended up playing, but then obviously no Odegaard. Who else was out? Rice because of the suspension. Yeah.
Declan Rice with the suspension.
Yep.
You know about Mikel Merino, who was, theoretically, that's your first choice midfield, right?
Right.
Odegaard, Rice, and Merino. Right. All 3 of them are out. I'm trying to think as well. Tomiyasu was also hurt, from earlier in the season.
Yep.
Calafiore was hurt with Italy, so there's another one of your fullbacks, probably on the left side.
So at least on the defensive line, though, with Timber in, we still had Saliba and Ben White and Gabriel Magalhaes. So, Benjamin White. But so we basically had a defense we could be happy with, right?
Well, yes, indeed.
As it turned out,
The interesting, to me, the more interesting about this is it leaves you very thin on the bench. You look at the bench, and we saw three subs come in. So you had on the bench in addition to your starters, which we should actually point out. So interesting, Kai Havertz played up top, but they actually had, and I've seen this represented differently. My impression was that Trossard actually was more dropping back in the midfield. Havertz as the forward. Martinelli and Saka played out wide. Jorginho and Partey were the central midfielders. So my sense, at least how it was described, was more of a, obviously not a traditional 4-4-3, almost more of a 4-2-3-1, with Jorginho and Partey as the 2 deep lying midfielders, Martinelli, Saka, and Trossard playing further up. Trossard more centrally, and then Havertz almost alone at the top. Now, because we were mostly with that midfield, we're going to cede possession, and we can talk about the tactics of it. So we were generally all going to be sitting back anyway and looking for counterattacks, which I think is largely what we got in a lot of respects. But to me, the more terrifying thing was then looking out and seeing the bench. Obviously, we know Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, Ethan Nwaneri all came on, so they were all on the bench. Other than that, we had the backup keeper, Neto, Jakub Kivior. And then other than that, we had a bunch of academy kids. We mentioned Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly is another name that's popped up. And then 3 names, I just love reading them out, because even though I'd never heard of any of these people before Sunday, Aiden Heaven, Aiden Ayden. So I'm hoping it's pronounced Aiden Heaven. I apologize, by the way, if I mispronounce any of these poor kids' names. Ismail Kabia. And then actually my favorite, Maldini Kakuri. He is an Albanian defender, which I only point out he's a defender because I hear the name Maldini, and it's a lot. Soccer fan, my thoughts go to Paolo Maldini, the Italian, the longtime Italian international defender.
Okay.
So otherwise, I can't think of why you would name a child Maldini, but he's playing defense, so it fits. It totally fits. But yeah, so that was kind of interesting and kind of terrifying. Like, well, this is what we're rolling with today.
Yeah.
And so it begins.
Yeah, I mean, so my notes from the beginning of the match, I mean, like, we kind of pressed into their end a lot in the first, like, maybe 3 to 4 minutes, almost 5 minutes, and then didn't have the ball the majority of the rest of the time. The stats I was seeing throughout the match were pretty much like 70-30 possession in favor of Tottenham most of the time.
Yeah, and I mean we did press, so it wasn't entirely like a bunker encounter where we were sitting back 10 men behind the ball like we've seen, we faced so many times. So it was definitely a little more, we were willing to cede possession, but it was a lot of empty possession, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't quite the horseshoe of death, but you could see we did a really good job keeping our defensive structure. And for Spurs, it was about looking for opportunities, probing for chances. We struck early on. There were times when we would press them, especially up high. We pressed them a lot in their end. We were kind of overrun in the midfield a bit, and part of that comes from rolling out there with Partey and Jorginho. Jorginho's never been particularly fast. Partey used to be. Clearly doesn't have those same kind of wheels as he used to have. And so there, you don't want to be as aggressive with them because then you're worried if they miss, they have to recover. Jorginho is not going to recover. And Partey, you're starting to wonder about that. So they're generally sitting back. We ceded a lot of the midfield, and so Tottenham was able to push forward if they broke the high press. Because, I mean, you look at that press, you've got Martinelli, Havertz, Trossard, Saka, and Yuri and Timber really pushing up a lot too. That's a lot of speed.
He did a lot, yeah.
That is a lot of speed up front, and so you're worried about countering. And for a team, Spurs is not very good defensively, and so there is a concern there. And then they generally have tried to play a more open, forward, progressing, attacking style under Ange Postecoglou. But they are, that's a danger. It's a risk you run against Arsenal, who's going to be sitting back more, partly out of necessity. Ideally, we would be dominating the ball. But when you don't have Martin Odegaard, you can't play that way. When you don't have Declan Rice, you need to have those. You don't have that cover for Partey or Jorginho, and so you have to be a little bit more conservative. And so they were willing to cede possession. But let's be honest, outside of maybe one or two chances they had in the first half, were you ever really nervous about Tottenham scoring?
I mean, they definitely had more shots, and they had more shots on goal. There were times where I was nervous, and I was thankful for Raya. Like, I felt like he had some really good reflexive saves that saved the day a couple times. They also blew some, especially later in the match. There were some notable ones where it's like, oh no, and we thought they were going to maybe draw even, but they shot high. There were some moments, and maybe that one that I'm thinking of may have been a deflection. I couldn't quite tell on the replays if someone got his toe in there or something. But yeah, I there were also some breaks. I mean, there were times where they broke, and we had some good backup defending, like just kind of chasing them down and getting it away from them. There were times where I wasn't like very nervous, but it wasn't like a walk in the park. It wasn't like I didn't think there was any chance. Like when we're playing against one of the teams that's just come up from the championship or something, where they may have it. I'm not really nervous. Like I was sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and some of that's Derby related. I mean, we outshot them in the first half. I mean,
okay.
A good chunk of their shots really came later, especially after the goal, when of course they become a little more desperate and we're going to be a little more conservative. I mean, I think he would never admit to this, but I think Arteta, and given the injuries and given the circumstances, would have been thrilled to walk out of there at 0-0 or maybe even 1-1.
Right.
1-1 after getting the first goal would have been frustrating. But I think all things considered, if we had walked out of there 0-0, I think he would have said, okay. So I'll take it given the circumstances.
Yeah. And that was the mindset I was going into this with, like knowing the heavy rotation and that this is our away match against Spurs. I would have been happy with a draw.
Yeah, and I think that was it. But I have to say, I mean, all credit here really goes, I think, to the defense, who was fantastic. And they have some dangerous players. Benjamin White, we talk about him going forward. We don't always talk about him as a defender. he was a little loose on some of his passes. I thought Party and Jorginho were a little loose on some of their passes. I thought the forwards, Martinelli especially, we don't usually talk about him in his tracking back on defense. I think he was constantly tracking back on defense. I thought, White was matched up with Son out wide, and he never really gave him space to do anything, which was a really impressive performance there. Timber, I think the sort of the general chatter, which I kind of agree with, I think was probably his best game as an Arsenal player. But it's 5 games at this point in time. but clearly sort of announced himself in a lot of ways, did a lot of things. Yeah, he had a few moments here or there that are still iffy, but I mean,
stepped on some toes. Literally.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But I think there was a lot of really, I think in the center of the defense, the central defenders, Saliba, Gabriel, and then David Raya in the goal. I mean, I thought Saliba was a little more noticeable in the first half, Gabriel in the second half. I don't know if I was just noticing it, if that's just more related to where the attacks were coming from. But I think really the defense, a lot of people look at this go, it's kind of ugly. There weren't a lot of great chances on either side, whatever. I played defense. I love defense. This was a good defensive performance.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it totally saved us. I mean, they may not have had the strongest chances, but our defense was, like I said, the defense that we probably would have gone with regardless of injuries as a starting lineup. And they performed the way that we would expect them to, whereas maybe our offense wasn't quite where we would have liked it. And I think all credit goes to them for keeping the clean sheet, obviously. I mean, it was a well-earned clean sheet.
Oh yeah, and a team defensive effort too. Mm-hmm. Like it isn't just enough to, I think, necessarily pick on one particular player, who really stepped up, and they all kind of did defensively. Even if, as I sit here and say, Partey and Jorginho have had better games, but I think both of them were fine in the roles they were asked to play. Mm-hmm. There were a few times they broke, players broke the other way. You saw some interplay with Martinelli and Havertz. It looked kind of awkward and some weird angles on passes. Like, that's not what he wanted to do. But overall, I think, and really at the end, we got everything via set pieces. This is a win for the set piece coach. We never really, I didn't recall anything particularly dangerous they got off a corner. And then corners or free kicks, even though they had a few of them in some dangerous areas, free kicks. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we scored a goal off a corner.
Yeah.
Just a thumping header from Gabriel, and 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Yeah. Yeah. One stat that I saw that I don't remember seeing before is I'm well familiar with the stat that we had more goals from corner kicks and I think set pieces in general than the rest of the league last season. What I don't remember seeing is that we had more goals from headers than the other teams last season too, which goes along with that. That's how we score from corner kicks a lot of the time, but that's interesting though.
Yeah, and I think that's also a reflection of sort of, we've talked about how the lineup has gotten bigger.
Taller.
These are just physically bigger men, playing on the field, and that kind of, that you can do those things. Go back a couple of years, the lineup is smaller, where you're not going to throw it into the box, into the mixer for a header, because you're going to lose. Like you're not going to beat those guys out. And you can have players like Jesus. Jesus is generally well regarded for his ability to get headers, even though he's not a particularly tall player. But yeah, in general, it's pretty simple. Taller players have an easier task of getting to the ball.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Do you want to talk about this 36th minute fracas?
Okay. We'll start there. So yeah, things got a little interesting. So I'll start everything here by sort of what I saw and what I thought was happening, because remember, as watching in the pub, I can't actually hear the commentary.
Right.
Too much other noise going on around, and they don't keep the volume up that high, at least not for the commentary. So there's clearly a tackle by Timber on Pedro Porro, which looked like a tackle, stole the ball, and he starts going the other way. At which point the referee runs over and whips out the yellow card. Now, from my perspective, watching it, of course, not knowing what was going on, the foul, it didn't look like a foul at all to me. Certainly not a yellow card. I figured the yellow card was an instance of time wasting, and that Timber hadn't heard the whistle blow for whatever reason, and so was still running with the ball, and that he was getting like we saw, theoretically with Rice the previous game, right? The
Right.
whistle blows and you run away with the ball. It is time wasting. That's the rules as they're written, not always enforced, and that's what I had thought had happened. And then of course there's a little bit of a coming together, but next to the Tottenham goal, in particular the Tottenham keeper Vicario had some comments for Timber about something, well, whatever had happened there. Timber then, goes right back to him and gets a couple of fistfuls of the keeper's shirt, which, I mean, I love standing up for yourself. I'm not sure I love the idea. It's great that you're, grabbing the other guy. Your best bet in those cases, kind of stick your hands behind you so they can't. So you don't, you kind of keep yourself from doing things, and then shout whatever you want at the other guy's face, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, and then you saw everybody else came together. Honestly, it was interesting. The first player to get in all that was Saka.
Yeah.
And you can see those guys in there, and they were there out defending their guy, and I can respect that. So I don't know. That's kind of how I saw it play out live. What about you in your perspective? Did you hear anything different from that?
So I don't really recall hearing anything that the commentators were saying. I think they were mainly I under the assumption, I think, that it was for the contact during the tackle, I think, was, and they were showing in the replay, and they're showing the tackle from all different angles where you could see that he clearly gets to the ball first, but that it was possibly maybe done in a reckless way where he did get like his studs into the foot of the other player, is what it looked like to me. On replay, it looks like that was the yellow card that he was pulling out of his pocket was for that, I thought, not time wasting. But what did you end up reading after the fact?
So what I ended up seeing was sort of apparently this was on a lot of the commentary afterwards, was what you saw. It was the tackle that really earned the yellow, and from the looks of it, his Timber's foot kind of goes around or over the ball and gets into the shin of Porro.
Yeah.
Or into the foot, I think it was, because they were both going for the ball.
Yeah.
Apparently, there was a lot of post-game kerfluffle about whether or not that should be a red card, and I don't know. I find that to be a little melodramatic. All things,
well, especially
considered.
Since he made contact with the ball first. Like it wasn't stepping on the foot. It wasn't even like trying to push his foot out of the way with your foot. It was like you both went for the ball, and the way that your foot deflected off the ball landed into his foot. It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting in part because they pulled a yellow, and of course yellows aren't reviewable, so the referees call in the field stands. But they do review potential red cards. I didn't get a sense or impression of whether somebody must have taken a quick look at it. Although, they talk about VAR review. Remember, that's of course after this whole dust up has happened, in which case they're probably checking to see if anybody else should be tossed for something they may have done during the whatever response.
was happening.
Yeah.
During that. I mean, Vicario got himself a yellow in that sequence as well, because he came right up to Timber. And to be fair, like that he escalated the situation. There's no reason for him to be going up to Timber like that, and the referee is well within his rights to say, "Hey, take it down a notch."
Yeah,
it was a feisty first half, wasn't it?
Lots of yellows went flying. I mean, mostly in Tottenham's direction. I think we may have gotten. I think that one on Timber may have been the only one in the first half on us. I think there were a lot going towards Tottenham, as I recall. Or I guess Saliba, I'm seeing, got one too.
Yes, Saliba got one for picking up the ball on a free kick and running away. So I don't know if that's what we're gonna call. Although I did see some Arsenal fans pointing out a number of similar things in some other games on Saturday were not carded. So, But to say that, because again, I don't want to dwell too much on the refereeing. Excuse me. Actually, I thought the referee actually had a very good game. I don't know. What did you think?
No, that was the sense I got too. I mean, nothing seemed wrong. There were a lot of calls, but and again, maybe this is just because most of them did go against Tottenham. I'm not inclined to disagree with it, but they seemed fine. I mean, and definitely you could hear when there was dissent from the crowd, but it all seemed justifiable. Like it didn't seem like anything was crazy. I mean, talking before we started recording, you noted this was it was a record high number of yellow cards in a half.
That's what I had seen. It was a Premier League record. And we always have to caveat these with Premier League. So it's like since 1991, ignoring the fact that there's literally a century of league play before that. But yes, once the Premier League invented the sport in 1991. As I understand it, that was a record. Apparently there were like 14 yellows issued in the, I think it was the Chelsea-Southampton game. Or was it Chelsea-Brentford? One of the games on Saturday had like a ridiculous number of yellows.
But then that number shrank to like just 1 or 2 in the second half. So what was your explanation for that?
Well, so I think there's a couple of things that it could be the case for that. One of those is that the referee being very proactive, giving a lot of yellows, set a standard fairly early on. You'll hear this a lot, this idea that you don't want to give yellow cards early. You don't want a yellow card given on a tackle, 3 minutes into the game. Well, maybe sometimes you do. Maybe sometimes it deserves a yellow, and sometimes that sort of sets the standard. Says, "Hey, okay, it's not getting any worse than this. This is what you did. You don't get to do anything else. Just lay down the law. No, bad. This is gonna." And so that kind of maybe takes some of the temperature out. The other possibility is, and I know I just said nice things about the referee, but the other possibility is that we've seen this sort of thing a lot. The referees call the game a certain way in the first half or for part of the game. And then another part of the game, they tend to call it differently. Now, it's generally this is the way, if they're going to do that, which I'm not saying they are, but if they're going to do that, this is probably the better way. A little stricter earlier, a little bit looser later. If it's the other way that sort of drives people crazy, you're going to let things go, and then suddenly in the second half, you can't do that. What do you mean I can't do that? We did that all first half. What are we doing here? Typical Italian football hand gestures, but like. So I don't know. I've heard some sense that that he really did get control of the match, and there was a certain feistiness to it, but I don't think it was particularly like over the top necessarily from the for the game in the second half. Definitely, I mean, there's some intensity, but it could also just be what we call game state, right? That once that goal comes in, all of a sudden you're tight in the second half. Like we don't have time for this fouling stuff. We gotta play the game.
So I was asking what you thought of Trossard's Janet Jackson-esque wardrobe malfunction when he came off to a sideline with a chest patch ripped loose on his jersey. If you saw what contact led to that, and I was just impressed by them having an instantaneously available replacement for him, which I guess they have for all the players or something.
Well, I mean, I think the best response came from a comment I overheard in the bar when he took off the shirt and went to trade it for a new one, which was someone just shouted out, "It's like looking in a mirror, man." There were also a few. We have a large population of women who attend also who were very appreciative of the of that one. Yeah, I mean, I think they have to have replacements available because in a case of a torn shirt or also blood is another one, they have to replace it, and you want that you want it there because they can't go out with a blank one. I mean, theoretically, but you have to have the number so the referee can identify the player.
Right.
So they have to have a backup there. I think they do. They have a bag full. I assume they have a bag full of them and just kind of there it is. There's the right one.
Right.
So I assume, you don't see that sort of thing often. Like generally, you see the tears. Sometimes they're like small. There are small ones, or the shirt was tugged or something.
Like around seams. Like if someone's tugging at your neck and it like tears at like the around the collar or something. But it was just like in the middle of the fabric, like someone, like Wolverine was attacking the guy or something. Like
I suspect some of that stems from they keep pushing for the lighter technology, and so I wonder if it's. They're a little, I don't want to say flimsy, but they're definitely not as they're they're one of those things are strong in some ways and weak in others. As they get a tear and it's completely gone. I don't know. But yeah, that was an interesting moment there. I have no idea what I assume there was some shirt tugging going on. But I didn't see anything.
Right. Me neither.
Saw or noticed that made me go, oh, okay, that's where that happened. So.
Yep. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, it was just about 10 minutes before that was we got the goal from Gabriel, and a few minutes after that we had our first subs of the match. We had well, actually, aside from Saka wasn't until after, so we had Jesus come on for Trossard, and Raheem Sterling made his Arsenal debut coming on for Martinelli.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think either of them really did all that much. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna like throw either of them under the bus. Obviously, I said a lot of good things about Jesus preseason. I still think he's in line to have a particularly good season if he can sort of get healthy. But I do think Sterling, I wasn't terribly impressed by anything I saw, but then again, he wasn't asked to do much. I mean, it's a weird thing to come on. These are offensive players coming on in a game where you're up 1-0 away from home.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're not going to attack very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw pointed out there was at least one instance where I think it was Jesus kind of drove in towards the box to like kind of fight his way through defenders and look for a shot. And you're almost like, honestly, the real play there is just run to the corner, take it away, just go down and time waste and sort of make them come after you. But yeah, they came on. Really, I think the more interesting one came later, the last substitution. Saka was hurt, as we mentioned, which was, it was always a little terrifying. And it came on Ethan Nwaneri, the academy player who we, of course, first saw a couple of years ago when he came on as a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll be honest, I didn't remember what he looked like. But I assume when we saw him, obviously he was 15, which is a 15-year-old. There's a certain look that 15-year-old boy is going to have in the sense that, being kind of smallish or skinnier. That's not the guy who came on. That man was a unit. Holy cow. He's definitely bulked up a little bit. Good for him. But I thought he was okay. I thought there were a few instances where I used to say his processing is a little slow. So he's a little slow in making decisions. I mean, this game is being played at at the top level. The speed of the game is what is the big difference. And I think there were a few instances where that's a pass you got to make a half second sooner. But I thought he acquitted himself just fine overall in his performance. The circumstances of his coming on were not what you want, but yeah, the circumstances were not what you want, but I do think overall he had a good. But I thought he did okay, and that was an interesting question, right? If this game is not the away leg of the North London Derby, if this game is Southampton at home, does Arteta feel more comfortable playing Nwaneri? As in from the start, does he feel comfortable starting him in the midfield and letting him see if he can work his way more into that Odegaard kind of position? That to me my suspicion is probably not, but I think it's a more interesting question. At Spurs in this game, no, he's absolutely not going to start, and I would be shocked if he starts either of our next two games, the Champions League away or City away. Maybe following that, where we go, I would almost guarantee probably that he starts against Bolton in the League Cup, which is basically a week from tomorrow, or is it Wednesday? Anyway, which is coming up in the next week. But yeah, this is a heck of a place to make not your senior debut, but definitely what we hope is the first of many minutes with the senior team this year, and then of course in the seasons to come.
Yeah. All right. Was there anything else you wanted to cover before we move on to player of the match?
Always feels good to beat Spurs, man. How much fun was that? And we'll talk about this a little bit coming up. Like, we've got a pretty packed week coming up. 3 key road games. That might have, obviously we're looking at this as a weekend lineup. That might also be the easiest of them, which is a wild thing to say. As we go forward in the season, or as we go forward at this point. But that'll be very interesting to sort of see, how that goes. Over the next, as we go through the next couple of weeks. But it feels good. It's a good result. I'm glad. It's good for us to have. So, excited that we can pull through that way.
Yeah, no, I was still glowing from it today. I mean, it's it's kind of funny. I don't remember feeling like that after a match before. That's definitely the first time for me with that. So who is your pick for player of the match?
Player of the match, I think in theory you could pick anyone along the back line. I thought the back line was excellent each in their own ways. We talked about White, Saliba, and Gabriel. We talked about Timber and his going more forward. I don't want to just worship at the shrine of scoring goals, but I think the goal is kind of the big difference. Big Gabby, gets that in, and he's a guy who just relishes being a good defender. Who, there's a sense he somehow his game elevated after scoring the goal. He was able to be aggressive in tackles and continue to make plays. I think he's a bit underrated. We always talk about how great Saliba is, and he is and was on Sunday, but I think Gabriel gets a little lost in that. So for me, Big Gabby was our player of the match.
Yeah, no, full-throated agreement. The defensive line gets most of the credit for this, especially because they were the ones that ended up producing the goal. It's hard to pick between any of the four defenders. Honestly, though, none of them, aside from Gabriel scoring the goal, obviously, none of them really got my specific attention more than Raya actually did. Like, there were a bunch of saves that really impressed me. Nothing as spectacular as a couple of the ones we've seen so far this season, but just really good, non-obvious saves. I mean, like, if you look at the saves that Vicario made in this match, I mean, he had a few that were just like, give ups, like just rolls towards him, no big deal, like just doing what he was expected to do. There were some beyond the Call of Duty saves that he responded to really well, and even some, like, you could tell the ones that went high, like he was probably there to stop it if it didn't go high or wide, where he was just always on top of things like we've come to expect from him. Caught some crosses in deadly situations that he deflated like he does so well. He was on top of his game, dressed head to toe in pink. So yeah, Raya for me.
Yeah, I mean, Raya's a good shout. For that work there in the central defense, and the way in a lot of cases, right, snuffs out opportunities. It's not about what he does; it's rather what he prevents Spurs from doing.
Right.
I do want to throw in a shout as well for Bukayo Saka, who, I mean, really truly might be, especially now we just play without Odegaard. Yes, it's a very different game. But we played pretty well overall, obviously, a little more defensively than we'd like. And I think it does sort of elevate Saka because, of course, who sent in the corner that Gabriel punched home? Well, it was right. It was Bukayo Saka. So through 4 games, he has a goal and 4 assists.
Right.
I mean,
that means he's been involved in every goal, I think, on or off the record. I think there was one that they didn't give him credit for or something. Yeah. But yeah, that's crazy.
Having an incredible season, I think, kind of, as we talked about last time, right? He's kind of elevated himself to the point where even when he's not great, he still is arguably the best player on the field.
Right.
Obviously, in this case, defense accepted, but a shout out as well for Bukayo Saka for continuing his very strong start to the season.
Yeah, definitely. He's
not seriously hurt.
Yeah, definitely. I was about to do the same thing. Fingers crossed. Yeah. So for dessert today, I wanted to talk about a very different kind of coaching experience that I had for our season opener for my Rec U8 soccer team on Saturday. So our team had our first match, and same team name as in the spring, the Cheetahs. Very different team makeup. We had a lot of first graders in the spring. We are now second grader heavy, so it's a maybe half the same kids, but the other half has made a big difference. And whereas last season we played something like 9 or 10 games in a season, I think we won 1, and there were quite a few blowouts we were on the receiving end of. But we won 10-2, and I was in the position of having to come down on at least one of our players for scoring too many goals, which kills me. But it's just a reality of the way that these teams are formed. And it's like, what we're trying to encourage him to do is once we got up to, I think it was 4 or 5-0, one of the other coaches who I'm friends with on the other team, he came up to me and he's like, look, I know you haven't been in this position before, but what we typically do is we'll like move them back to defense or, and what my assistant coach came up with, which I thought was a good suggestion, is, okay, they are not allowed, once you've scored a goal on our team in this match, you are not allowed to shoot on goal. If you have the ball, you must pass it to someone else to get it to them to shoot. So that way they're still developing other skills. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, I kind of wish that we didn't have to do that, but it's like, you understand being on the other end of it. You don't want the other team to feel so completely dejected that they don't even want to play anymore either. So,
yeah, I mean, look, as much as we want to indulge our competitive instincts, I mean, these are 6-year-olds, these are 7-year-olds. It's like,
Yeah, it's not the competitive aspect of it. It's not that I want them to win by a large margin. It's that, scoring goals helps you get better at scoring goals. And
I mean, you don't want to put them in a place to say, okay, like the thing we're trying to do, I want you to not try to do that anymore.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but yeah, right. It's always, especially at that level, it's always a tricky thing. I was actually going to ask, so is Cheetah's a self-selected name? The players picked that, or okay, that's like
no. This is given to us by the coordinator of our rec league, and in baseball I do pick, and that's actually something else we can talk about for dessert. But in our soccer league I do not pick. I'm given the team name. So
okay. Sometimes that's better. Just sort of Especially
it's at least loosely tied to the sponsor of the team.
Yeah.
It's not always clear to what degree, but I think they try for that. When I'm making the baseball team names, I do basically, without exception, find a name that is at least tangentially related to the sponsor. I mean, so for instance, a couple times my team has been our Village Pizza, and there's of course Village Pizza from my town and the neighboring town. They're both league sponsors, and so I've been the Ninjas. There is like the kind of tangential relationship. Well, what do I think of a pizza? I think of a Ninja Turtles, so we're the Ninjas, right? Okay. This season, our sponsor is a local VFW post. So for non-American listeners, that is the Veterans of Foreign Wars nonprofit organization. They're a place for veterans to hang out and have a drink and stuff like that. So this was actually my first time using a chatbot, like an AI chatbot, to do some stuff for me, right? Like in a non-technical, like a non-programming capacity. So I was telling it, okay, come up with baseball little league team names for a sponsor that is the VFW, and I prefer single word names ending in ERS. Like that is kind of the way that I tend to name the teams, right? Ninjas is an exception, but generally it's something like that. And it came up with some good suggestions. Do you care to guess at what I ended up choosing and why I'm mentioning it now on the show?
Was it Gunners?
Gunners. I went with the Gunners. Yeah, so we have red jerseys with a white logo on them, and when we do our cheer at the end of practice or a game, it's 1, 2, 3, go Gunners. So that's been fun. We haven't had a game yet. We've had 3 practices because it's an odd schedule. We have bye weeks, so we had a bye week this week. But so. So what's coming up for Arsenal next week? This week,
this continues a pretty interesting stretch for us. So our Champions League opener is next. We're going to go to Bergamo in northern Italy to face Atalanta, not Atlanta, Atalanta. There's an extra A in there. That'll be the Champions League opener and away game. That'll be on Thursday. So that's a bit unusual. Some shuffling has to do with scheduling, availability of places, and security and all of that fun stuff. But that'll be on Paramount Plus. I guess the Europa League gets top billing. So there's that. Champions League Thursday, and then Sunday at Manchester City. Another massive Premier League game. Hopefully we're a little. I mean, obviously we'll have Declan Rice back for that one, which is good.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can have a few other players and be a little stronger overall. I'd be very curious to see tactically how we approach those games. Obviously we, in some ways this game with Tottenham was a lot of ways a follow-up to the same kind of game we played at City last time. Definitely sitting deeper, definitely being more conservative, not being on the front foot, not trying to dominate possession or dominate the flow of the game in the way we did, sort of limiting their opportunities. I mean, again, we talk about the number of shots. How many of those shots came from outside the box, sort of not from dangerous areas. And so be curious to see how they approach that. Also, the Champions League game as well. Obviously, this is the new system. So this will be the only time we see Atalanta. They are not making a return trip to the Emirates. But hopefully some lovely shots of the Italian Alps, I guess, during that game. So
you may not know, and if so, we can just skip past it and save it for follow-up next week. But I have to imagine that Atalanta has probably been around longer than Atlanta, Georgia. Is that the basis for the name of Atlanta, Georgia? Assuming it's a city and it's not just the name of a club.
Well, Atalanta is the club. Is the club's name? I don't. Hold on, I'm gonna look up the. Is named after the female athlete of the same name, a heroine in Greek mythology. Who probably would
yeah.
Atalanta. It wouldn't surprise me if there's some. Because I don't know quite what. Well, no, I mean it's Atalanta. Real quickly, let's look up Atlanta, which I think is named after the city in Georgia. Because that's been around for that's been around for a while. Certainly from the 19th century.
Yeah, but they have nothing on ancient Greek civilization. So if Atalanta got her name, if that club got their name from Greek mythology, then it seems likely that's where Atlanta would have come from.
I don't know. Oh, wait, okay. So it's the railroad, the Western and Atlantic Railroad. So it's tied to the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, coincidence. All right. Yeah. There you have it. All right. Well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to like one of our shorts from this or past weeks on your platform of choice. It's a simple one-click way to help us out. We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talk about, including our social pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches,
where we always know what we think of Tottenham.